Strong and uninformed opinions. Doing a little stand-up episode today. So, real quick, let's just get into it. We are 3 weeks into a Trump presidency, and am I the only one who feels like it's been, I don't know, a couple years or so? We are getting bombarded left and right with just everything. There are changes aplenty coming. Now, we can all debate whether they're good or bad, but I'm just going to lay out some of my stuff. One, I think that first off, most people have never even heard of USAID. Now, the whole new thing of like nobody elected Elon Musk to be in charge of the government. Well, let's clear up a couple things here. First off, do you really think that Elon Musk is in charge of the government, or is he an advisory? They are clearly going through these things line by line, like they keep telling you. And they're finding all of the stuff that, I mean, unless you were blind, we all knew this shit was going on, okay? Congress has the lowest approval ratings almost ever, and these are the people who run these agencies. So when we just leave all of the oversight of these agencies to a group that is doing the absolute worst possible job in the eyes of the American public, what do you think you're going to find? You're going to find all kinds of bullshit, which is, I mean, I'm sorry, but that seems like what a lot of this is. Most of this spending that these agencies are doing is bullshit. Now, that's not to say that there aren't good programs weaved in with all of the bullshit. There's clearly going to be some stuff that is actually like good and we should probably keep. But to think that you should just let these guys do business as usual, like they've been doing for however many years with horrible results, and think that anything is going to change if Congress is the ones overseeing it, is crazy. So my personal opinion is that everything should be looked into, and if need be, taken apart and redone. Let's get into, somebody brought this up to me the other day, so I actually did a little bit of research on it. NOAA, okay? Now, NOAA basically is like the federal weather agency, which, okay, that seems like a good idea, I guess. But it's also an idea for a different time. The entire job of NOAA could basically be done with a couple computers now, and instead we have an entire government agency who runs it. Well, why? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me, to be honest with you, okay? So there's a couple, I'm not exactly sure what NOAA's budget is, but it's not little. So what? We're going to just let them go business as usual, spending all kinds of money on what? Predicting the weather? Your computer at home probably has enough computing power to predict the weather, okay? So there's just one quick example. So they've already axed USAID, which I'm all about. Some of those programs do need to be brought back in other ways, but why do we need so much government bureaucracy? Why do we need a million agencies to do all these things that are oversight by Congress, the people who are failing us the most? So yeah, let's give them more power, more money, all that shit. And every one of us disagrees for the most part with what they're doing. All right, so then we're moving on to the Department of Education. Now, obviously, education is really important. It's part of what our tax dollars are supposed to fund. However, since the inception of the education department, we went from number 1 in the world in education to I think it's number 27. So again, we're funding an agency that isn't even doing their job properly. So why is anyone mad when somebody goes in there and says, well, hey, you've had 40 plus years to do a good job and you actually just ran it into the ground? Real life doesn't work like that. In real life, if your business or whatever isn't doing well and you tank it, then you go out of business. Well, a government agency isn't like that because nobody bothers to even look into it. Now, I've also heard people say like, well, it's only like $1 million, 15 million. You add all that shit up. Not to mention, what happened to us in this country? Oh, it's only $1 million. It's only $1 million? Only $1 million. Like, you got to look at yourself. If you've probably seen the memes and all that stuff, but like if you're more mad at the people who are looking for fraud as opposed to the fraud, like what the hell does that say about you? And here's the thing. We all pay for this shit. All of us. If you pay taxes, you pay for this shit. So you should care. You really should. So I'm not opposed to them maybe not getting rid of, but they should probably gut the education department a little bit. Clearly not doing a good job. Now, this week, he also announced that they are going to be going after the Pentagon. Now, I would love to hear somebody excuse this one. Anyone who doesn't think the Pentagon should be audited, seeing as how they have never passed an audit, ever. Some of you may be too young to remember this, but part of 9/11 conspiracies is the fact that the government, right before 9/11, announced that the Pentagon had misplaced, I believe, $4 trillion. Like they just couldn't account for how they had spent $4 trillion. Now, granted, it was over, I think, a 10 or 15 year period, but does that really matter? $4 trillion. Let me put this in perspective. We are $36 trillion in debt, and we spend $1.5 trillion more dollars than we make every year. Think about that in your own life, okay? In your own life, if you spent that much more money than you were bringing in every month and no one seemed to give a shit, nobody was doing anything to curl it back, nobody was doing anything about spending, forget party. I don't want to hear about like Republicans spend just as much as Democrats. I don't give a shit. You all spend too much money, okay? $1.5 trillion, more than what we make. And we've been doing it for years. If we were an average person, because you don't need to think of these things on larger scales. Granted, we're not governments. Me and you are not governments. But on a smaller scale, if you were doing that, you would be bankrupt, broke, credit cards maxed out in a matter of, months. Well, depending on your situation. However, you get my fucking point. So to be mad that somebody is actually doing something about this when it's something that should have been happening for years, and all of a sudden, now that it is actually happening, it's almost telling when you see, the more I see somebody complaining about what they're doing right now, the more I'm actually thinking, well, then you're just in on it. And you're just the one who's benefiting from these scams. Now, I also don't think that they are, because the other argument is, well, wait till they come after your mom's Social Security and all this stuff. I don't think that's what's going on. If I'm wrong, egg on my face. But I don't think that's what's going on. I think that they're literally going through and looking for the fraud, which there is a ton of. And again, you are lying to yourself if you don't see that fraud. That fraud is rampant and it's everywhere. I mean, it's everywhere. We joke about it all the time. You buy a toilet and it's $200. When the government buys a toilet, it's $5,000. Why? Okay. So anyway, this brings us, we're only to the third week of a Trump presidency. So let's talk about one other thing that's got nothing to do with getting rid of agencies and all that stuff, and that would be Trump's ridiculous idea of buying Greenland, making Canada the 51st state. We're going to turn Gaza into a hotel. I think obviously these are all insane ideas, but I think you're overlooking, if you're not paying attention and you're just paying attention to the sound bites, you got to realize that Trump literally does this with everything. He did it in his first presidency and he's doing it again now. He will literally say the most outrageous thing ever to land somewhere in the middle. Okay, we're not going to turn Gaza into a hotel. Okay, but what he's doing is that he's forcing all the parties involved to be all like, well, we don't want that. And Trump's crazy enough to maybe do it. But he's not. He's not going to do it. But what that does is it brings all the parties who are actually have a vested interest in this together to do something about it. Because let's be honest, if nobody does anything about Gaza, where the fuck are these people going to live? How is that place going to get rebuilt? Who's going to feed them? There's a lot of logistics here. This has got nothing to do with whether you believe in the whole Israel, Palestine, or Gaza war, because it's not all Palestine, it's Gaza. Um, you can agree with it or disagree with it. It's over, okay? Well, maybe it's not over with, but that place is destroyed. So now something has got to happen. And the only way that that's going to happen is if you get a coalition of states that are all involved in it to come together and pledge money, resources, building materials, all of this stuff to actually go in there and fix Gaza. Now, how is that going to look? Who knows? But if Trump goes out there and yells that we're going to buy Gaza and turn it into a hotel, all of those parties are like, whoa, 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 wait a minute. I mean, we'll do something. If you look just today, he met with the King of Jordan. Okay, King of Jordan sounded like he was basically on board for almost anything. Where I promised you a couple weeks ago, before Trump made his ridiculous statement, he wasn't on board for anything. They weren't going to help. They weren't going to, no aid. They weren't going to do anything. Okay. So same idea with him saying, well, Jordan will take all of the Palestinian refugees. Jordan is not going to take the Palestinian refugees. But if he puts that out there and makes that ridiculous claim, Jordan's going to have to be all like, well, what are we going to do, though? We're going to have an unstable government basically on our border. Same with Egypt. Egypt has a vested interest in making sure something happens with Gaza. Something has to happen. So, but, same thing with like Greenland. I mean, we're not going to buy Greenland, but there is a strategic thing with Greenland that you can't really ignore, and that is with the polar ice cap melting, Russia is going to have more and more access into the Arctic Sea, okay? And through the Arctic Sea, they can launch attacks on North America. It's not even just America, it's North America in general. So the whole idea behind we'll buy Greenland, so again, it'll land somewhere in the middle, and it will end up being that we will have probably a larger military presence in Greenland than we already have, mainly just because we're not going to buy them. They don't want us to buy them. Fine. But negotiating would be that, you let us put it like another military base there, a naval base. We get some submarines and things up there. And that would be the middle ground, which is not us buying you. And it's not us like not getting anything either. Also, I would like to say this, which a lot of people don't know. We have tried to buy Greenland almost, I think it's something like 10 times in our history. So to say that this is an outrageous idea is not really all that outrageous. The way it's been proposed is outrageous, but there's a strategic advantage to owning Greenland that America has always recognized. And Trump is just proposing it in the most insane possible way he could think of, okay? But yeah, they say, may you live in interesting times. We definitely are. I love the whole idea of going after government agencies that are literally just wasting our money. Our money. It's not their money. It's me and yours money that they spend way too much of on all the shit that they want, and it doesn't benefit us at all. Like I said, I think the Department of Education is probably a good idea in concept. Does it work? No. So how long are you just going to let the status quo just keep pushing forward knowing that it doesn't work? Like, that is literally just burying your head in the sand and hoping everything gets better. That's not how anything works. If your house is on fire, you either get out or you try to put the fire out. You don't stay in bed and just go, well, maybe it'll go out by itself. I mean, that's just stupid, okay? So I'm all for it. And as far as Elon goes, I mean, the guy has clearly got some sort of, he's on the spectrum along the way there. Very smart guy. Here in Arizona, we just saw one of his Falcon 10 rockets take off. And I mean, we're like 500 miles away from where that thing took off, and it was impressive. Now, I'm not just going to say that I was dazzled by shiny lights in the sky, but clearly you can, and this whole idea of, well, he was a Nepo baby. Okay, but even Nepo babies have to got good ideas to make more money, okay? And I don't believe that Elon Musk is just tripping his way to being a billionaire. He's making good moves and he's got money. That's really, you're kind of just, that's haterade right there, okay? Fine, you hate him because he's rich. Cool. But that doesn't excuse the fact that he's putting his money into things that are clearly working and making him more and more and more money. Not to mention making just the world better. Like, you can hate Elon all you want. Starlink is a great idea. Okay, it's the idea that the Biden administration was trying to do. We're giving everyone internet. He actually did it. He actually got it so that every part of this country, for the most part, has internet. Okay, now the only difference is he's going to charge you for it. That's capitalism. All right, but don't think that just because he's going to make some money off of it, think of how much money he had to spend to do it. And yeah, he deserves to make some money off of it, okay? These things are not just for the public good. The government was trying to do it for the public good, and they couldn't do anything, okay? I posed to a friend of mine just today, name one thing you think the government does well. And I'm being very honest here. I can think of maybe one or two things, and that's it, okay? So I don't like the idea of just giving these people more money to do a bad job. Like, that just doesn't make sense to me. A lot of people would disagree with me, but in my mind, you're almost like, what's the right word? You're enabling. It's like enabling an alcoholic. Okay, like, these people are drunk on power and money, and you're just all like, well, they'll figure it out. Clearly, they're not gonna. Okay, if they would have already done it by now. And you're just, well, I'm going to leave a 12-pack of beer here, and, if you need to drink it, you can. That's enabling, all right? And I'm sick of it. Anyway, so I don't think Elon's a Nazi. I don't think he's running the government. I think he is influencing policy, but if you think that that's new, you're out of your mind too. Remember a guy named Fauci? Pretty sure nobody elected him either, and I promise you he affected all of our lives for at least 2 years. So let's look at things clear-eyed before you start getting too crazy on, honestly, not even conspiracy theories. You're just almost wrong, all right? There are always people affecting government policy, all right? And the fact that he's going after fraud, and until I see any sort of evidence that he's going after something that isn't fraud, then I will agree. Okay, they're overstepping. But until this point, I haven't seen any of that. Okay, I really haven't. So we're going to see what happens. Trump just put a deadline on the hostage releases for Gaza for Saturday. And in his words, all hell will rain loose if they are not returned by then. Don't know what that means. I don't think anyone does. Could be an empty threat. I don't know. I think what it maybe means is that if they're not returned by Saturday, that the ceasefire is done. I don't know. But yeah, we're living through some interesting shit. And what it basically comes down to is I think, in my mind, the status quo was complete bullshit, and our government was broken. So anyone who's coming in there and shaking things up, and as long as it doesn't look like they're doing it for any other reason than to uncover fraud and all that other stuff, I'm pretty much okay with it. Auditing, or not even auditing, but going into the Pentagon is something that we should have all wanted for years. I mean, you had an American president literally warn us about the military-industrial complex, and we did nothing about it. We had another president literally come out and tell us that they were going to start a new world order, and nobody did anything about it. These people have actually announced their plans, and because politics is boring until recently, now it's just a fucking carnival, nobody paid attention. And so they've been getting away with this shit for so fucking long, they just think they can do whatever they want. Well, it looks like the party's over. And I, for one, am pretty happy about it. You can feel however you want about it as well. I mean, if I'm wrong, I get egg on my face and a big "I told you so." But I have a feeling I'm not wrong about this one. I mean, either way, all I care about is everybody being able to live their lives normally, keep some money in their pocket, go on vacation, and have a nice dinner every now and then. And as far as I'm concerned, the one thing that's standing in everybody's way when it comes to all of that is big government. So the more we can shrink that shit, the more I'm on board. All right. So that being said, just remember that we should hate the right people. I hate our government. I love America. I cannot stand what our government's turned into. So I don't dislike my neighbors. I don't dislike anyone around me. I dislike this giant beast that roams in Washington, D.C. that, in my mind, deserves to be killed. Or at least severely maimed. Take one of its arms off or something. They have just overstepped their boundaries a lot. So then the other one that they're talking about is auditing the Fed. Now, this is another whole subject, so I'm not going to get too deep into it, but you want to talk about another government agency that is absolutely needed to be audited? It's the Fed. Most people don't even realize that the Fed doesn't even have oversight. They determine our monetary policy, and they are a private bank, which in some ways is probably a good thing, because if you look at what's happened with everything else, imagine if Congress did run the Fed. They've allowed so much misuse and fraud to occur with the stuff that they do oversee that if they were in charge of the Fed, we would probably, the lights would be off and we'd be all living in squalor right now. Because another thing that most people do not realize is that pretty much every currency around the world is tied to the American dollar. Well, being tied to the American dollar means that we control the world's basically monetary policy. So this one bank basically decides who stays rich, who stays poor, how much money you have in your pocket. And you can say all these things are not true, but if you do even 10 minutes worth of research, you will understand that what the Fed decides is literally what happens to us on the ground in this country and around the world. But anyway, I'm getting tired of standing. New stand-up setup. Strong and uninformed opinions. We should have a full episode coming out, I think, sometime this week. Lots to go over. I think it'll be me and Chris Bailey, and we're going to talk about the whirlwind of Trump's presidency 3 weeks in, even though it feels like he's been president for like 3 years already. Strong and uninformed opinions. You guys have a good evening. We'll see you later.